Good day. Welcome to another edition of the National Reentry Network for Returning Citizens Black Table Talk podcast. I'm your host, Mr. Sellers, and I'm here with none other than.
Hey, how you guys doing? My name is Tony Vinson. I'm a reentry coach for Free Minds Book Club and Writing Workshop.
Thank you for being here today, Mr. Vincent. So we're going to dive right into our conversation today. As you know, we are still in a serious fight when it comes to advocating for us as returning citizens. So I would like you to start off your coming of age story with just a little bit of background about who you are.
All right. Well, thank you for having me, Mr. Sellers. And again, my name is Tony Vinson. I'm originally from Cleveland, Ohio, by way of Denver, Colorado. And I guess for me, the early, incarceration and things like that happened for me, like around 11 years old. Started attending juvenile prison and things like that. And that graduated into adult time, and ended up doing 3 different bids in Department of Corrections in Colorado, and moved out to D.C. in 2016. And my goal is once I hit D.C. was to start to change my life. I was no longer interested in, the things that prison and, criminal lifestyle had to offer, and I really wanted to give myself an opportunity, being in a new city, new people, places, and things, to change my life for the better. And I believe I'm on that path.
Beautiful. I love the fact that you said that. Just going to put it in context. So who was the little, Tony Vincent as a child, right? Before you were involved in the legal system, what was your background like? What were some of and just so we can get context in terms of like what a black man in America was, going through in their adolescence.
Okay. So no, good point. Cause it's interesting cause things happened early for me, in getting involved in that kind of, juvenile delinquent lifestyle. But, let's back up. Obviously growing up in Cleveland, Ohio is, in East Cleveland, Ohio is, kind of similar to, being in some of the bigger cities, Chicago, LA, DC. It's very poverty stricken. East Cleveland's hugely poverty stricken. Just grew up like any other kid in a poverty stricken, area. Grew up in the ghetto, grew up in, public housing, grew up with parents that were on public assistance. I remember buying cigarettes for my mom when I was a kid, and, taking dollars of food stamps to go, get a couple penny candies for, 5 cents, and then getting the 95 cents back and doing that like 3 or 4 times, and then buying my mom some cigarettes. So it was just, to me, that was normal though. Like that was normal life. Like that's how I grew up. When I hit 6, and to give you a little context before I jump into this, you guys can, see me, I'm half breed. I'm black and white. My mom is white. My grandmother is white as well. And both of them were, my grandmother first, her second husband was an African-American male. And when we grew up in East Cleveland, I was kind of, if you want to put it into context, I was kind of like that white family that was in the black community. Like that's exactly how it was. But my mom was, she was what they call at the time a go-go dancer, but a stripper. And I don't know if they use that term out here because you guys have go-go bands.
Right. Yeah.
But I actually, when I was thinking about that earlier, I was like, go-go dancing? I wonder if that has any relation to anyways.
Yeah. You're right. There's a connotation to it.
But it was the old school term that they used, for strippers back then. But my mom was a go-go dancer. And, when I was 6, and like I said, I grew up just like any normal kid. And like I said, the poverty, the food stamps, the, eating here and there and everywhere, like whenever we could, like I said, was normal to me. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary until when I was 6 years old and my mom put me and my brother in a foster home. Now, to rewind back, my mom is white, and she was a go-go dancer. She's, danced in, a pretty nice area in Cleveland down in the Flats. It was downtown. And, you're going to meet all sorts of individuals. East Cleveland is its own thing. It's mostly black, but you have West Cleveland. You have the suburbs. So people's going to come from all over to go downtown and go to these events. So on one of her occasions, she had met this guy. They became close. And I know leading up to it, and I remember my mom was like, yeah, we're going to be moving. I met this guy. We're going to move in with him and, blah, blah, skip. So we have been packing our stuff up over the past couple of weeks to a month or whatever the case may be. And leading up to the day, he was coming there to, bring his truck and get our stuff and this and that. And I remember full was like, the sky is blue right now. He walked into the house and me and my brother were standing there. And he was a white guy. He walks in and he looked at us and he was like, he looked at her. And I think, maybe his perception is, when she said, I have kids, he was thinking it was two little white boys. And he walked in and seen two little black kids. And his words out of his mouth was, ain't no N word staying in my house. Either you get rid of them or I'm getting rid of you. And less than 2 hours later, we were in, child services and dropped off with our stuff.
God.
So that started that process for me of the juvenile delinquency. Like I kind of stated too earlier, like it started early for me because once we hit that group home, it was on. Like group home is just basically like a mini jail. Like you have a bunch of juvenile delinquent kids or, kids who are given up by their families and you're just in this big old, space. There was probably about like 100 of us. There was like 5 different houses. I remember they separated me and my brother, and that was a big thing because like my brother was losing his mind because he was way older than me. He was like 13 at the time, so he understood what was going on. He knew exactly what that word was when that guy said what he said.
Right.
And I obviously didn't, but I was in that process with him. But my closest person that I knew was my brother, so he became my father, and that lasted for about like a good 6 months while I was in the group home with him. And then I was adopted. Some family came through and was like, yeah, we want him, and picked me up. And I was there for about probably like maybe 18 months to a year. And I ended up running away for physical abuse. Like they, don't get me wrong. My mom used to put her hands on us too, but like these people was, they was tearing us up. So I ran away at one point and I had a caseworker that was from the group home. So they ended up, talking to my grandmother, and eventually I was able to go back with grandmother, which put me back in my old neighborhood in Cleveland. And because where I was at in the group home was like way out in the suburbs. I didn't know anybody. We were totally separated from our family. Didn't know my family at the time because we were going through that transition. Nobody could come see us. Nobody had the ability because, we were poverty stricken to come drive out to see us at the group home. My mom went on to live her life with this guy. They're still together to this day. We were left to try to pick up the pieces. Like I said, when that foster home came and adopted me and then I ran away, I went with my grandmother. I went back to my old neighborhood, and it was on from there. It was just being around old friends who were starting to graduate into, criminal activity. They had uncles who were selling drugs. They had, dads that were in prison, and we were just following suit. And in Cleveland, it's basically neighborhood-based. You have a lot of neighborhood gangs, but you also have, normal street gangs, GDs, vice lords, things like that. We don't have much Bloods and Crips up there, but so I was blessed on as a GD and immediately just started that lifestyle as a gangster disciple, just, selling drugs, carrying a gun, and doing the things that was necessary to live that gang life or that gang activity lifestyle. And I was building my resume up to be a career criminal because by 11, I was in handcuffs. By 12, I was on my way to juvenile. And I just kept progressing until I got to the point, like I said, where I was 16, 17, and I caught an armed robbery on an at-risk adult and ended up getting sentenced to adult prison. I actually didn't hit the state prison until I was 18 because I was fighting cases. I was trying to go to juvenile at the time, and ended up getting state time and went in young at 18. Got out when I was 21 and went right back within 6 months. Because, again, being in Colorado, when I ended up moving to Colorado, it was kind of like I was in juvenile prison. They were trying to release me. I didn't have family in Ohio that wanted to take me. By that point, my grandmother was done with me because I had been so criminally active that, she just didn't want me in her house. So nobody wanted to take custody of me. So my uncle was like, well, I'll take custody of him. My uncle was out in Colorado. He already had premeditated plans because he sold drugs. The minute I got out there, I was selling out there. So I was, taking weed to school, taking coke to school when I could, and, just ended up, like I said, by the time I was 18, catching that case and going to adult prison. And so it was like I said, it was just a gradual build. And even every time I got out at 21, when I got out at 24, it was just right back to my uncle. and I was right back picking up a pack and right back to the streets, because Colorado and Ohio run a little different than DC does. I was surprised when I came out to DC in 2016 and like I didn't have to pay for drug screens, or I didn't have to pay for the halfway house. I wasn't in the halfway house, but if I would have been, you didn't have to pay for these things. In Colorado and Ohio, if you're in a halfway house, you pay for it. If you're taking drug screens, you pay every single drug screen. It's not like they give you a break or they're like, no, your first one is free on us. No, from the jump, $17, $15, whatever it was back then, and this is the 90s.
And this is a condition of release, and you have to pay the fee to meet that condition of release.
And well, to continue with that condition of release. And if you don't at some point, and some drug screen places would let you build up a tally of like $100 if you were working, or you could tell them you were working and try to build up a tally.
Well, what happens if you don't and they step you back?
Violate and you go back.
What?
Violate and you go back.
You know, most people don't know that.
They don't. And
no one, it's like a way, it's a profiting off the system of those who are most vulnerable and those who we need to love, you know, and wrap our arms around. But the state itself is sanctioning profiting off of the most vulnerable.
And let's just say this is the only place that does this really that I know of is DC. That does where it's free.
Wow.
DC is very progressive on this, because like even like you can look at New York. 50 Cent just dropped out something that he bought a halfway house in New York because Big Meech is being housed there.
Okay.
And he said, now this nigga can pay me rent. You know what I mean? Wow. So like, because he knows and
the money's coming in.
The money's coming in because in New York you have to do the same thing. You have to pay for that halfway house.
Yeah. So the people who live there have to pay to reside in the halfway house.
Exactly. So if you're just coming home, you ain't got no job, like I said, and you're required to pay $350, $400 a month, $17 a day.
How do people maintain, like, what is the bridging of the gap between the unemployed person coming out of the system and then they have all of these fees that they have to pay, like the CSOSA or whoever the agency that's actually the probation officer or the parole officer, like, is supposed to be helping that person reacclimate to society. What are they getting paid to do? And I'm not being funny or hyperbole. I'm like, the bricks are just keep, being stacked up against this person. Is like, they are not going to be able to do this.
I was never successful in Colorado, like coming out on probation or parole, just because of that reason. And it would always be like, I would start to get in debt and I'm trying to do it the right way. Like, I just want to work a job and I'm trying to get a job, but I can't because of my felonies. And then all of a sudden I'm in a bind and they're like, listen, if you miss another drug, if you can't pay for the next drug screen, then you're going to have to skip it. And if you skip it, like, you're going to
step you back.
Step you back for skipping it. But we're not going to allow you to take a drug screen here no more. So then your PO gets notified. And then in my mind, I'm like, all right, he's about to get notified. When I walk out of here, I'm just going to go on the run.
Can we talk about the punitive system in that? Because this is, when we say breaking the cycle, this is what we're talking about.
I want to say wholeheartedly, when I came to DC in 2016 and I took that first drug screen and they didn't ask for no money, I walked out of there and I knew in my heart I was going to be okay.
Yeah.
And this stuff brings me to tears right now because
it
was such a struggle, like being in any of these other states, trying to be successful in this avenue of returning to society.
Yeah.
Like, you need certain things to be able to return to society effectively. Housing, job, those things.
Transportation, food, the big six.
But if somebody's taken from you right out the gate, and these are state people, you start to get a bad taste in your mouth. And but I've known so many cats that's been that road, or I've been in the penitentiary and cats is about to get released and they're like, I don't know how I'm going to do this. Like, I know I'm going to be on the run in a couple months. I know it.
Wow.
So it was beautiful to come out to DC and see that. But like, it's amazing, like, how progressive DC is on helping returning citizens. And like I said, once I got out here, I knew I was going to be okay because of the help that they were offering me. So,
yeah, where's the compassion? Like, everything that you just said, Mr. Vinson, it screams punitive. It screams hate. It screams it's okay to other. It's okay to discriminate. It's okay. It's like we talk about like let's like a returning citizen who doesn't have the big sis: food, clothing, shelter, and then the other three would be transportation, employment, and healthcare. So we're basically, as a society, saying it's okay to talk to that person any old kind of way and tell them, you know what, there are people out here who never got a rap sheet and they're not getting help. So why should we help you?
Exactly.
And that mindset
Right.
is laced in the system. And everything that you just said, and how emotional we all can become when we hear the ugly truth about what is actually happening, because there are a lot of people who feel like it is very black and white. Like, you come out, you get yourself together, you pull yourself up by your bootstraps, but it's not so. It's a whole different ugly situation that you have to every day begin to program.
Of course.
So in all that you said, especially about the coming of age in terms of you're in and out of the system, the public health issues that were systemic in Cleveland, right? That people, not just, I don't know how old you are, but in just your lived experience of how you told us that story, you can imagine that it still have been unchecked. It has been no oversight, right? And the system is continuously punishing people. And that's the model, it seems like. So what I wanted to kind of discuss and get further clarification on you, like, how does a person begin to feel, like you say, instead of feeling hopeless, instead of feeling like, you know, we don't have the model that's here in DC normalized throughout all 50 states, there's so much more work to be done, but it's like people are getting away with this. And why is that?
It boggles my mind. And I believe, like, Colorado plays itself as a very liberal state. You know what I mean? They've put out there very early, I think it was in like the late 90s, that they legalized marijuana. They were the first state to do it. And it was kind of like, come to Colorado, we're so great. And it's, once you get there, and if you do anything criminally related, it's like, you know, and it's even, you know, as small as child support, you know what I mean? I was on child support out there as well. And it was just like, you know, every time I turned around, it was like, you know, even while I was in the state, like, it was one of them things that, like, they were taking money out from my, you know, $11 a day $11 a month that I was making through the state working. They're still taking 20% of that based on child support. And it was just like that deep rooted of a hate for, you know, individuals who were in the system, unless you're a child, you know,
right?
Because they got out a lot, you know, it was a different situation for that. But, you know, still, even like, if you're, you know, black and you're committing crimes out there, you're going to get bolted to the wall. And it's like,
right,
even so much so that it's like, they don't just give you a sentence out there. Like, if I, you know, on my first bid on that armed robbery on an at-risk adult, I took a 4-year bid, and it was mandatory with all sentences that you go to DOC, that you have a 3 or 5 year tail based on the severity. If it's a felony 1 or, you know, felony 2, you're probably going to get a 5-year tail. If it's a 3 or 4 or 5 or 6, you're probably going to get a 3-year tail. But that's mandatory. So I could do all my time in prison, all my whole 4 years, every day, day for day, and then get out and think I'm going to be free, and I got 3 years parole.
Yeah.
But that's that liberal part of Colorado playing its hand and saying, we're going to get as much money out of you as we can, because we know you're going to violate in these 3 years. Because we've set these things in place for you to fail, not to succeed. DC sets stuff in place for you to succeed. Colorado sets stuff in place for you to fail, and you are going to. And when you do, you go back on that tail, and you don't get good time for that tail. You do day for day on that.
Wow.
So if I get violated in 6 months, I go back and do that 2.5 years straight, day for day. And I better not, like, get in a fight or stab somebody or this and that, because you know obviously how that goes. We ain't never come home then. So, and it's just a repetitive cycle, and I've seen so many cats, like, get put in that trick bag. And it was, like I said, it was one of them things that when I came home this last time, I knew I had to change people, places, and things. And I was blessed and fortunate enough that I had the ability to come out to DC and change my life. Like I said, it blows my mind. My grandmother cried when she first seen me when I came home, because I came to Ohio in a suit, and she cried when she seen me. And she was like, I thought the only time I was ever going to see you in a suit was in your casket.
Wow.
And to see you, like, doing what you're doing, she was like, and at that time she had read my Washington Post article, and it was just like,
what was the post in the article, the Washington Post about?
It was so coming to DC. When I got to DC, I really didn't, obviously I'm not from the city, and I didn't know what I was going to do. I had cooked my whole life. I had worked in kitchens the whole time I was in prison. So I was like, well, you know, I might want to do some cooking. I found out about DC Central Kitchen very early on, and ended up applying to their program. I really did it with the intent to have them help me get a job because I'm not from DC. I could get a cooking job, but